Amin Elhassan, ESPN Front Office Insider, joins us with a look at the NBA playoffs, which continue. We'll get his thoughts on Curry winning the unanimous. First time it's ever happened. See, I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with the other times it not happening. Bring Amin into the conversation. By the way, Sam Hinkie got 3 votes for Executive of the Year.
I saw that.
What do you think about that, PT?
Bob Patrone put that out on Twitter, and I just started laughing.
The process lives on.
Yes.
All right, Amin Elhassan joins us.
Assets.
Sports Patch 97.3 ESPN. By the way, had Brett Brown on yesterday. Go listen to that
good.
interview.
I did listen to that.
All right, check it out. Amin, how are you, pal?
How's it going, gentlemen?
We're all good? What do you think about Hinkie? 3 votes. They should bring him back, right?
Yeah. I really want to know who voted for him. I really want to know.
It wasn't us.
No.
Well, it's the executives vote for the other executives,
right?
I believe. So I want to know who did it and what their current employment status is like, because I'm pretty sure there's a correlation there.
I'm kind of interested to find out who those guys are and what their thought process was as well. I mean, what's your thought process on Curry not being the MVP, but being the only unanimous MVP ever?
You know what? I'm surprised that it happened, not because I don't think he's deserving, but because I just thought someone would be that guy who would just, I don't think so, or I thought Kawhi Leonard had a pretty good year. I thought someone would do that, and that didn't happen. So I think that's pretty cool. I feel like you. I'm not upset about that. I'm upset about the guys who should have done it with Shaq and LeBron in those years where they missed by 1 vote, and they were absolutely unanimous type MVPs.
Yeah, because I don't know, I can't come up with a guy that I could, like if you told me, well, LeBron could have been in the conversation or anybody, I would say if you put the 2 names on paper and the guy voted for Curry, I have no problem with that. So therefore he's unanimous to me. I got no problem with that. Was there a second guy even in the conversation for you?
No, he was MVP. I mean, let's be clear. There was no way anyone could walk away and say he wasn't the MVP this year. The question is, would everyone unanimously feel that way, or would someone just try to be the different guy who came up with a different name just to get a little bit of I don't even. It's not even shine. I don't even know what you call that, because it's not like your wish is going to come true. He's not going to win, whoever you were voting for. So. I don't think there was a question who the most valuable player in the NBA this year was. Particularly when you think about what he did. I was talking about this today on the NBA Lockdown podcast. 12 months ago, when the Warriors are in the middle of their championship march, or even, let's say, 10 months ago when they finally completed it, and if I had sat there and said to you, hey, by the way, next year, he's going to be way better, would you believed it?
Well, that's why I got no problem with it. They got better. A lot of times you don't see the team that's going for the championship the second year get better in the next year. They kind of go through the motions at sometimes. They got better, and they were historic. He's historic, and that's why I got no problem with it. And he was historic again last night. I mean, 40 points, 17 in the overtime. I mean, what a special player. He's been sitting out for 2 weeks.
This is the part where I get the feeling that the NBA is scripted. This guy really wasn't hurt. He took a 3-week vacation. Does he want to hang out? And said, I guess just to give everyone enough hope to say, well, maybe the Spurs can win it this year. Oh, the Cavs are playing great. And Steph Curry came back, and he gave everybody like a 2-quarter head start, and then just unleashed all hell in the second half. And that moment where he hit that double step back, long to turn around and look to the crowd, and tapped at his wrist as if to say, time's up. He wasn't talking to Portland. He was talking to the NBA.
So, to you, the Warriors are not the equivalent of the New England Patriots when they went undefeated. You think that they were the best in the regular season and that they are going to walk through, not walk through, but, they're
going to walk through. They're going to walk through.
So what about Cleveland, the way they're playing? They're not selling you at all?
Here's my question to that. Are the Cleveland Cavaliers going to be playing either the Atlanta Hawks or the Detroit Pistons in the NBA Finals?
No.
Then in that case, no. I'm not impressed. I mean, what they've done is basically they've done that. The difference between what Cleveland has done and what Golden State does is exactly that. Cleveland has done this for 8 games. Golden State does this all the time. This is what they do. They did this to an entire NBA. They did this the entire season. They did it to everybody. And so when you look at Cleveland's fantastic shooting, that is more a function of, yes, they're playing really well right now, but these are the people who they're playing against, versus when Golden State does it, this is what they do. This is their normal level of play.
Amin Hassan's with us, ESPN front office insider. Are you discouraged, Amin, by the way that Oklahoma City has pushed the Spurs? Did you think the Spurs, would win that like 4-1? Did you think it would be easier for them, or did you think it would be a battle?
No, I mean, obviously when you're dealing with that kind of talent, Durant and Westbrook, then that gives you a chance any given night to win and to make life miserable, as they did in the previous game on Sunday night. The difference is, over the course of a 7-game series, we expect those outbursts to be more easily handled by a team like the Spurs. And so when you look at the 2 losses they had, yes, Durant went bananas in both those games, I believe, and Westbrook went bananas in the first one, not in the second loss. But San Antonio lost because they made dumb mistakes. They could have won those games. They just made dumb mistakes, not forced mistakes, unforced errors. And that's kind of something that we don't expect of them. We expect them to be the execution team. And so I'm not surprised. Obviously, Oklahoma City's talent can push anybody, but I still think San Antonio's going to win this.
Miami-Toronto, great series, all overtime. Not the best played basketball, but entertaining. Either one of them have a shot. Who gives Cleveland a better series?
Well, I mean, before Hassan Whiteside went down, I thought Miami has a good shot of beating Cleveland. They were actually my pick to win the East at the beginning of the year, and I kind of doubled down on it. But if Hassan Whiteside's not healthy, that kind of really eliminates a huge advantage that they had in the middle. As we saw last night, it makes life harder for them offensively, not because he's such a great scorer, but because when he rolls, he demands so much attention. And so without that, it comes a lot more difficult to imagine them beating the Cleveland Cavaliers. And to be honest, the same goes for Toronto if Jonas Valanciunas is not available.
I mean, a guy that we know in this area, Wildwood High alum, Frank Vogel, leaves the Pacers. His contract not renewed, fired. You can slide that or determine that. Semantics, right? Tomato, tomato. But where do you think he lands, and what's Frank Vogel's future?
Oh, you know what? What I said when it happened was Frank Vogel's going to end up coaching a better roster, probably in a better city, and making more money than he made in Indiana. I mean, that's the truth. Whatever your criticisms of the Indiana Pacers is, I find it hard to believe that the source of that criticism would start around coaching. To me, it starts around that roster. You had a guy like Lavoy Allen. I know he's a
Temple guy, but that's fine.
Yeah, Lavoy Allen is not a starter in this league. Good player, top player, but once you start with something like that, then you're asking someone with a very flawed roster to do better offensively. It's just a silly demand given the lack of talent that they have. Obviously, Paul George is a great player, but he's not a particularly efficient player. He's not a lights out shooter. He's not Klay Thompson shooting the ball. So even his offensive gifts, they're not conducive to like a top 10 offense, given the supporting cast they had. So I think Frank Vogel is going to end up on his feet. The problem is a lot of these positions have been filled, right? So now we're all scrambling, and the names he's going against, Van Gundy, you got David Blatt in the mix. I mean, these are formidable names. Mark Jackson, all these guys are like 50-game winners pretty much. And so it's a little bit of a squeeze right now, but I think in time, whether it's this summer or next summer, he'll be working somewhere and he'll be doing a much better job, or he'll have a much better job than he had in in Indiana.
And we'll stick with coaching for a minute. We talked with, of course, maybe Vogel sits out and gets grabbed by his home team too. That's always a possibility. Maybe he could come back to the East Coast and the Sixers.
Yeah, we talked to Brown yesterday, and he was kind of talking about how it's discouraging to see coaches that are winning get fired. You wonder if Brown's got a little heat after signing that extension that he's going to have to start winning. And, Vogel has local ties, whether he's just kind of sitting in the weeds saying, you know what, that Philly situation could be good in a year or two.
Yeah, I mean, I think Coach Brown, again, I don't know if anyone could look at the job he did and say, oh, this team's a mess. It was the coach's fault. He can only coach what you give him. And so Brian Colangelo, it looks like, and from what we know about Brian Colangelo, is going to be pretty aggressive about getting this team better right away. So Coach Brown's going to have a lot more talent next year than he's had in his entire tenure there. But then once that time hits, you've got talent, then that excuse is out the window. Then you have to show and prove. And, I think we all hope for him because he's such a good guy and made extraordinary juice out of the lemons that he was handed. I don't know if I call it lemonade, but he did a great job given the circumstances he was put in. But he's going to probably have to show and prove, and if not, then maybe it is Frank Vogel, maybe it's someone else.
Now, yesterday I asked Coach Brown if he wanted the Lakers pick or not, because they have 3. That would be the 4th, and there's some people that think this draft is, okay, not the deepest. He said, no, I'm greedy. I want them all. Would you want that pick if you were the Sixers this year? Would you just say, you know what, we'll wait for next year for that pick?
Man, it's a tough one because you don't know where the Lakers are going to be next year, and I'm not saying that they're going to be a top 5 team in the league, but you may be talking about the difference between do I get the 3rd pick this year or do I get the 19th pick next year? Or even if it's the 13th pick. Maybe they're still in the lottery, but just not a good lottery pick. In general, we always want top 5 over everything else. Those are more coveted things. I'll give you an example. When I worked for the Suns, the Atlanta Hawks owed us a lottery protected pick in the same way. It was at first it was top 3, and then it was and then it was unprotected. And every year it was top 3 protected. The Hawks kept their pick. And the year it finally became unprotected was the year they went to the playoffs for the first time, and it became the number 15th overall pick. So it's just one of those things where you don't want to gamble too much. If it's available and it's here, let me have it right now.
Yesterday, he also told us that he thinks that Dario Saric wants to play. They know the financial situation. They're going to go over and talk to him. And Embiid, there's been a very strong indication that they believe he will be ready. Do you think that those 2 players will make a significant impact to this roster next year, that this team could go from 10 to, I don't know, what's a number that you think they could go to with those 2 players and the amount of picks they have?
Well, I think Embiid could, just because of the type of talent he is and the skill he's at, and because he's been here. So a lot of the things that happen as an NBA rookie, the adjustment period, he's kind of over that, other than the playing part. But even practice, he's been in practice. He's seen the NBA speed. He knows the NBA way and all that stuff now. There's some questions about his maturity and his professionalism, but you hope that those things are cleared up by now. For Saric, it's a lot more difficult. First of all, obviously, there's just an adjustment period coming from Europe. We see it all the time. But beyond that, if I'm in Saric's camp, if I'm his agent or anyone close to him, I'm completely advising against coming over, not because Philly's not a good situation or it's a good situation now or whatever, because if he waits one more year, he can write his own check. If he signs now, he's got to agree to the NBA rookie scale, which would pay him somewhere between $2 and $3 million, I believe. But with the cap going up to $90 million, he's eligible. Next year he could sign a $7 million a year deal, a $10 million a year deal. You basically get to call or negotiate against the team about how much money you can make. So waiting one more year to make double or maybe even triple as much money in your first season, I think it's well worth the wait, to be honest.
Yeah, and we've heard from people that cover the international game that say the coach over there is such a disaster that he wants to get out of there so bad because no one respects the coach over there. But you're right, he could write his own check. Amin Elhassan, ESPN, here on the Bash, 97.3 ESPN. The playoffs continue tonight. We'll have Game 4 or Game 5 tomorrow night, Golden State here on 97.3 ESPN. Thanks, Amin.
Thanks a lot, guys.